Look, I love the latest and greatest mirrorless cameras just as much as the next guy, but the fact is, there's actually loads of reasons why you might want to look at picking up an older DSLR, even a used one for a few $100. And that goes for people just buying their first camera ever, right through to working professionals, seriously. And it's not just a matter of cost either, there are a lot of advantages to these older, obsolete cameras that newer cameras just can't beat. I still shoot the vast majority of my work on this Nikon from 2014, from street photography to commercial work, all sorts. We'll talk more about this camera specifically later on, but first let's go over the advantages that ye oldie camera has over Megatron over there. Let's start with a pretty simple and obvious one, and then work our way more odd. And at the end, I'll share why, despite all of this, I still might ignore my own advice. First off, DSLRs are cheaper, and that is a factor for almost all of us, regardless of what the industry wants you to think. When I started to take my photography seriously, this camera was all I could afford. You can pick up a really great professional level DSLR used for around half the price of its mirrorless equivalent most of the time. Now, I assumed that at some point later down the line I would upgrade, but to be honest, I really like the photos I can make with this. Just because there are better cameras out there doesn't make this one a bad one. The Ferrari F40 is 38 years old, and compared to modern supercars, it's slow, but it's still faster than your Ultima. A lot of people ask me about cameras and what they should buy, and if it's a first camera, I almost always say the Canon 5D Mark II, and yeah, it's a little bit old and maybe you have to faff about with the CF card instead of an SD card. But if you look at the prices of new cameras, even really entry-level ones are brutally expensive to buy brand new at the moment, especially if you're impacted by tariffs. As an example, the cheapest full-frame Canon camera at the moment is the Canon RP, which is a great camera and it's well worth the $899 it costs. But you can get a used 5D Mark II for half that, or for the same price, get a used 5D Mark IV. We'll talk about why you might want to do that later. Before that, the next reason that a DSLR sometimes wins out over mirrorless is durability. On the surface level, that doesn't make much sense. They're older, they're more worn out, and they have more moving parts. And mirrorless cameras are still pretty tough, right? Well, yeah, I recently knocked over a tripod with an FX30 on top of it, and it survived just fine. Or at least the camera itself did. And if you have a Z6 or an A7 III or a Lumix, whatever their latest one is, it's not that it's not durable. It's the way that these cameras fail that's the trick. Mirrorless cameras are all very electronical-like, and if anything goes wrong, it's likely to be quite a pain, if not impossible, to get it repaired. If something goes wrong in this, it's probably a little bit less skill intensive to get it sorted. And if you've got experience shooting both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, you'll know that even if maybe they are just as tough as each other, DSLRs just feel a bit more durable. There's just something that feels more chunky and rugged and sturdy about this than a mirrorless camera, and that is more important than you might think. The last thing you want your camera to do is stress you out even more when you're taking photos in the middle of a storm or a riot or a rainforest. Now, being cheaper and feeling more tough are two big factors that will make you feel confident to take your camera with you everywhere, to rowdy football games or the beach or out in the rain, and it's often in those bad for cameras places that you'll find your most unique opportunities. Now, a big advantage to fancy pants Mr. Mirrorless over here is that it's way smarter. If you think about it, this thing is doing a lot of work to get that instant autofocus, to run the screens, including this one, and to power through 11 photos a second. But when you add all that up, this is a very clever cookie, but it will absolutely munch through a battery in 2 to 3 hours of shooting. This thing, on the other hand, despite looking like it could have been made by Komatsu, lasts weeks. I can go on a 4 or 5 day long holiday with this thing, not charge it once, and still have battery left over when I get home. Sure, charging a camera isn't that big of a pain, but do you know what is? Running out of battery at the wrong time. This Nikon D750 has never, ever, ever died on me, not once. And there's only one battery in here. I only use the grip for, grip. Having to carry extra batteries is annoying, and having to monitor and worry about your battery percentage sucks, and both of those problems just kind of don't exist with a DSLR. Now, you might think that because these mirrorless cameras are a lot cleverer, they might be also a lot faster, and they are at finding faces, at firing off machine gun burst speeds, but not at everything. I have the need for fast startup speed. I want to be able to turn this on and start shooting instantly, and not quite. But the DSLR, yeah, instant. That's another thing I really like about the Nikon. It's not doing anything clever enough to be able to lag, even for a moment. Also, remember that this mirrorless camera has a screen in the viewfinder. That's a really clever idea. It's great. You can see exactly what your photo will look like. You can check your exposure, all sorts of stuff. And I don't like it. I fight every day to spend as little time looking at a screen as humanly possible. With the DSLR, that's easy because this isn't a screen. You're looking through the lens. That's what the mirror is for. With this, I have to ram my eyeball up against a screen the whole time. Also, I think that the experience of using a real optical viewfinder is really important as a creative. When you shoot mirrorless, you can get pulled away from what's going on around you a little bit more, but more importantly, when you use an optical viewfinder, you have to force your brain to visualize what the photo might look like before you've taken it. That's really important, I think, because you're training your brain to look for and notice compositions even when you don't have a camera up to your eye. And finally, the really big, important reason that you might want to snag yourself a DSLR on eBay as an early Christmas present: it's really fun, especially if you only have mirrorless cameras or you don't have a camera at all yet and you're just using your phone. Having an optical viewfinder and a lens you can control and tactile buttons and things that go click is a really, really rewarding experience. When you go out to take photos, the way that you and your camera interact will have an impact on the photos that you finish with. Like if you're using a film camera or a disposable or a really long lens or a fisheye or medium format, the way that you are seeing and processing and composing and exposing, and even what you notice in the first place, will change. That same thing happens with DSLRs and with mirrorless cameras. They're not better than one another, they're just different. So if all of that is true, and I love my Nikon D750 as much as I say I do, then why have I been considering picking up a Sony like this or a mirrorless Nikon? I will come clean. I will be open and honest with you. But first, you have to be open and honest with me. Have you got a portfolio yet? Because it's easier than ever with Framer, the sponsor of today's video. Framer is an all-in-one website designer, and it makes it so quick and easy to make and publish websites that a well-trained monkey could do it, and I am the proof of that. Also, slowshutterspeeds.com is proof of that. I used Framer to build a reference guide for using slow shutter speeds to get cool effects. Let me show you. First, I had a little browse through Framer's massive library of templates, and I picked one that was great for showing off photos. Then I customized it a little bit to make it feel a bit more on brand, stuff like fonts and colors, things like that. Then all I had to do was upload my photos, type in what I wanted to say, and it was done. Quick and easy, and now you can use it to look at different examples of slow shutter photos with the exact settings I used. But aside from being great for people of my skill level, or lack thereof, Framer is also a really powerful tool. It's got super advanced analytics, you can even run A/B tests on your landing page, and you can use localization to translate your website to share your ideas all over the planet. So this weekend, after you've gone out and taken some photos, sit down for an afternoon and build yourself a portfolio outside of social media where you can showcase your art the way you want to. With Framer, obviously. So, launch your site for free at framer.com, and while you're at it, use the code HunterCreates for an upgrade on the house. Links are below. Thank you very much to Framer and to you for your support. Why do I want this? Why do I want to betray my DSLR lifestyle? Is it the orange and teal? Is it 11 FPS? Is it the low light performance? No, it's much deeper than that. It's something I've been struggling to admit to myself for a really long time. This thing is too fucking big. Okay, it's not that simple, but that is one of the big reasons, pun intended, that I've been tempted by the dark side. It cannot be ignored how much lighter, smaller, and more backpack shovable into mirrorless cameras have got. I usually like a chunky camera, I like the way they feel, but the reality is that now, a lot of the time, I also have this big chunky video rig with me for shoots, and carrying around two big heavy cameras hurts. Sorry to my big heavy ego. There's a few more reasons that this old chestnut is on probation. I love that I can swap lenses between this and my Nikon film cameras. That's great. Manual focus film era lenses are super affordable and have a great look. I'm not massively into the really vintage thing, but I do like a slightly less clinical image, and lenses like this 35mm f2.8 do that perfectly. The only problem with that is that with an optical viewfinder, manual focus sucks, especially with wider angle lenses. Even though Nikon has a little focus confirmation dot, 90% of the time, it's not actually in focus. And the unfortunate reality is that I can whack all of these Nikon lenses and all of my other vintage lenses, no matter what the mount is, on a cheapo adapter and stick them on just about any mirrorless camera. When I do that, I get focus peaking. I can punch into the center of the image and double check that I've got critical focus. And they just adapt nicer. Have you ever tried adapting a lens to f-mount? Good luck. So being able to use all of my lenses on a dedicated stills body would be great fun, from my Pentax medium format glass to the Helios 44-2s, right through to old Pentax glass. But when it comes to using default settings boring autofocus lenses, is there really any point? Well, maybe. Everyone that I know, all of my friends know me as the camera guy, and I'm sure your friends know you as the camera person too. And so the fact is, we're going to end up with a lot of opportunities to shoot stuff that is not what we are best at. And every now and again, I have found myself in a situation where I needed faster burst speeds or better autofocus. You never know who your friends know, and if you get asked to go take photos of a diving competition or a meteor shower, it's not like you're gonna say no. A really big, practical, real-life example of where DSLRs fall short is shooting with the screen and not the viewfinder. Most all DSLRs have some form of live view, but most of the time it's so slow and clunky that it's basically unusable. Obviously that problem doesn't exist on a mirrorless camera. And even though I always prefer to shoot through the finder, sometimes you do have to shoot with your camera really high up or really low down, especially with pets and little kids. Little kids especially, because they don't have object permanence, right? So you put the camera up to your face, they think you've disappeared. If the camera's down at your waist level with the screen flipped out, it's much more fun for everybody, believe me. But again, the big, main, important reason that I'm thinking about picking up a mirrorless camera as well, and the same reason that I think you should, it's fun. It's different, it's refreshing. I think changing gear a lot is a good thing as long as you're using it to see how the new gear changes the way that you see the world, and not because you think it will make your photos any better. And after all that, no matter what camera you end up getting, the only thing that you need to do to make sure that you do end up with good photos is F8 and be there, which I'll teach you all about in this video right here. Stay hydrated and create art.